Prof, I mean, you mentioned the African Union. I mean, has the African Union become a toothless bulldog? I mean, in terms of, getting rid of corrupt and sit-tight leaders like the Zimbabwean leader, Mugabe?
You know what is amazing about the African Union, which is the immediate success of the OAU, is that it's beginning to let Africa down. I was amazed about a month ago when Zimbabwean president, whom I respected in his early days as a freedom fighter and as a man of vision and intellect, when he went to the African Union and made a donation of $1 million, and the African Union accepted it, in a situation where the people in Zimbabwe are suffering, where there is almost 80 to 90% unemployment. And the reason why the African Union has become, as you rightly say, a toothless bulldog is because there are no leaders who are true crusaders for the agenda of the African Union in the manner that we had in the early days, when we had Nkrumah, when we had Nyerere, when we had Haile Selassie, when we had Gamal Abdel Nasser. Today, in a very perverted concept of non-interference in the affairs of other nations, and in a perverted understanding of the idea of sovereignty, people are not their brothers and sisters keepers, so that we know that there is a festering wound in South Sudan, and we are doing nothing about it. We know there is a festering wound in the Cameroons, and we are doing nothing about it. A festering wound in Togo, and we are doing nothing about it. And even when the leaders congregate in Addis Ababa for their annual jamboree, they don't discuss these problems. Right now, I would have thought that there should be an extraordinary session of the African Union to discuss a number of things, to discuss the countries which are in trouble, and I'm mentioning them ad nauseum, to ask the question, what is the problem in the Central African Republic? How can it be resolved? What is the problem in Togo, in Gambia, in the Cameroons, and in many other countries, so that we have African solutions to African problems? Because what we'll see very shortly is that the UN will sit down and send a peacekeeping force. And when there is no peace to be kept, and they send peacekeeping forces, when, in a manner of speaking, the horse will have bolted away. So the African Union is very disappointing. When Dr. Mahamat was appointed as the chairman of the commission, I thought that this was a new person that would come with new energy to replace Nkosana and Dlamini Zuma. But what I see is lethargy. What I see is lack of enthusiasm. What I see is lack of direction. What I see is continued pain. I was amazed about a month ago, if I'm not wrong, when the international community asked the African Union to nominate a country to sit in the Security Council, and they nominated the Democratic Republic of Congo. How can you possibly nominate the Democratic Republic of Congo, whose president has refused to hold election, whose country is generating refugees, whose government is controlling Kinshasa only in real terms, and where there is conflict everywhere, and where the resources are being taken away by the Chinese, the Malaysians, and the Belgians, and other rogue individuals from Europe and America, and you nominate such a person? You nominate a hyena to sit in an assembly which is judging how goats should be preserved? It is a tragedy of gigantic proportion, and we consistently do this in Africa, and we think is normal. Africa has now normalized the absurd, and we think that sense is what we do, yet it is nonsense. And unfortunately, many of us who are not in positions of influence, our younger generation particularly, think that this does not matter. This matters. If you look at the history of revolutions, it was always the young people. As early as 1908 in Turkey, it is the young people who came up to rise up against the dictatorial regime. We remember even during the Bolshevik Revolution, it was the young people. We remember during the civil rights movement led by Martin Luther King Jr. and Ralph Abernathy, among others, it was young people. In 1968 in France, when there was a problem, initially in 1958 and 1968, it was young people. We remember in Tiananmen Square, it was young people. We remember in Korea in 1908, it was the young people. In South Africa, in the Sharpeville massacre in 1969, it was the young people. In Soweto in 1976, it was the young people. In the Arab world, it's the young people. But our young people in Africa today are imprisoned by Arsenal and Manchester United and Barcelona and Real Madrid, and our young girls are imprisoned by cheap South American soap operas and Beyonce Knowles. How can that be? How can a continent be so accursed that our young people have no sense of our history, no sense of our presence, no sense of our future? No wonder the Chinese are conquering us by the day. And we are wondering. John F. Kennedy said in 1960, a society whose young men and women are in a constant state of slumber will never realize our potential. Our young people must wake up. It is only the day that they wake up that they will be able to send a clear message to those in positions of leadership that you cannot continue to misgovern us. I look forward to those days.